Okay, so I have now finished all of my rows. You should have a total of 10 rows of that double crochet all the way around with 60 stitches in each row. So make sure you count your 10 stitches. So this is what it looks like right now. At this point, you are going to go ahead and fasten off. So for that, I typically leave a somewhat longer tail so that I can hide it longer, hide it down the road. So we're going to go ahead and cut that. And just for right now, I'm just going to pull it through. I'll deal with the actual tying off later. And then from this point, you are going to count for 35 stitches around. At 35 stitches is where we're going to make the front side of like the bib. So this, if the baby was wearing it just like this, we're going to count 35 stitches. It'll start us here, and then we'll crochet back and forth right here to build that front chest piece on the bib. So I personally like to go ahead and go into the work of wherever I'm going to join it, and then go ahead and take where I've started the yarn again, attach that on my hook, and just pull it through, and then I like to do a little slip stitch. It then calls for you to chain 3, so that was our first chain, was that slip stitch, and then 2, 3, and then that is actually going to count as the first double stitch in this row, and then we're going to do 19 more, so you're going to have a total of 20 double crochet across this row. At the end of that, you are going to turn your work. If you've not yet hit that follow button, follow along. Depending on the size of your yarn and how tight you pull, there might be enough left over yarn at the end of this to actually make a hat or some little booties for your kid or for your gift, whoever you're making this for. And so that's always an option also to do with your work. So then I'm going to go back and count and make sure I got 20 stitches going across right here in the front. And so if you look at this also, this is where I just worked. Directly behind it, if you fold it in half, should be the back part right here, because we're now working on the front chest little area. After you have the 20 stitches, which remember that first triple or the first chain 3 did count as a stitch in this case, you're going to chain 2, and then you are going to turn your work. Now you're going to go ahead and double crochet in each stitch across, and then at the end you're gonna go ahead and chain 2 like you just did, and you are going to do that until you have, this was your first row, you need 7 rows of 20 across. You do want to make sure that you go ahead and double crochet right here in that first little area to make sure that you get your 20 stitches. If not, you'll only have 19 and you'll be losing a stitch. So I just finished my first little row here, and just a quick note, just to remember that while in the other rows we were not counting that chain as that first stitch, you did in this row, and so you do want to make sure at the very end you do get that last one and that you have 20 going across plus the 2 chains at the end. When you go back across, you don't need to try to catch those 2 chains. You just need to do this top little section right here, and that'll be your 20. And that'll make sure you have nice straight rows. Without that 2 chains, sometimes it slants in a little bit just because of the pull of that double crochet. So again, now we're going back across for now our 3rd row. And I've just chained 2, and you are going to go back into that very first one to make sure that you're not losing any of those stitches. I personally like my stitch counter, so I do have that once again in that middle section right here, so I know that that should be my 10th stitch, and then 10 more after that, just to keep track of the 20. Okay, so once you've finished your 7 rows of your front part of what they call the bibby area, you are going to not fasten off. You are going to go ahead and turn back around. You do want to chain 2 at the very end of that last 7th row, then turn like you've done for every other row. You're going to start making the first strap off of here. So the rows are going to be a lot smaller because it's just going to be for that thin little strap. So for this next row, you are going to do double crochet into that first stitch just like you've done for the last 3. just like that. And then what you're going to do is you're going to do in the next stitch another double crochet, and next stitch another double crochet, and that's going to be the first row of the strap. Okay, so now that you have 3 stitches, you did your chain 2, and then you did 1, 2, 3 stitches. At the end, you are going to chain 2 again, and you're going to go ahead and turn. So it's going to be very small. You have all of this left over. You're going to leave it for right now, and then you're going to go ahead and insert into that first stitch and do 3 double crochets going across. And 3. So that is all you need to know to make your straps. So chain 2 at the end, and then once again flip it and do 3 more double crochets. So we just finished our chain 2. Let's go ahead and get a zoom in on that. We've not zoomed in a hot minute. Little zoom in. So now this is 2 rows of that strap. You're going to need 14 total rows for that strap, and then when you're done with that, go ahead and fasten off, and then we'll get started on the second strap. So this is what it looks like facing forward now. We're coming along. Okay, so I just got to the end of my 14th row, so I went ahead and snipped it. I'm going to go ahead and just do a quick little knot right there. I'll go back and fix that later. So it just tickles me how quickly you can do 14 rows when you're only doing 3 stitches in that row. So what you're going to do next is you are actually going to come over to the other side over here, and then you are going to go ahead and rejoin. So I personally like to count over 3. 1, 2, 3. That way the stitches are all going to be facing the same way. So when we started this row, it was facing me, and when I was going across. So I want the stitches to, there are slight differences in looking at the stitches from each row. So I personally can see the difference. If you can't, that is fine. You can start in the corner and do 3 stitches. I, again, personally just like to go 1, 2, 3 and count 3 over, insert right here, go ahead and do a little slip stitch right there, chain 2, and then go ahead and do a double crochet. I also will then take the tail and actually pull it up with me like this, and then I will hold it down, I'll insert it, and actually I will crochet the tail into it, so that way the tail is not sitting out there in the open. So go ahead and do the same thing you did last time, but 14 rows of those 3 double crochets. Okay, so once you have finished the 14th row on your second strap, you are not going to tie off, you're going to continue. And so what you're going to do is you're going to chain 3 at the very, so after you've finished your last double crochet, you're going to chain 3. You want this to be not super tight, but not super loose either, just a nice normal looking chain. And then what you're going to do is you're going to slip stitch into the corner there. So we have 1 double crochet here, second one here. On this third one in the corner, you're going to insert into both, and then yarn over and pull through both hoops. So you slip stitch that chain down, and what that has done is let me move that around. It's created a hole right here, and that's where the buttons will go through when you attach the buttons onto the main part of the romper. What you're going to do next is you are now kind of turned sideways by slip stitching like that. You're actually going to single crochet all the way down, and then you're going to continue to single crochet all the way around the top, and then you're going to then continue it back up the other side and then up the strap, and then when you get to the top of here, we will continue. And just to kind of show you what that's going to look like, you have the double crochet right here. And then you have like the space between the rows right here. I personally try to get 1 double crochet. I just go straight into that chain right there, and do 1 single crochet there, and then I go in the little hole right here between the 2 rows, and I try not to go fully in the hole. Like you saw, I just pulled back out because I did not like my placing for that. If you do the hole, it kind of sometimes will show. So I do try to get like into that loop right here instead, and just do another single crochet. The nice thing about what we're doing right now, so right now we're making kind of like a nicer border than what it currently has. But the nice thing about this is that there's not like a set number of single crochets that you have to do going around the straps right here. And so if you want to do more, if you are pulling like tighter, like there's not really like a great place to go in right here, but that's kind of where the next stitch will fall. So I will see if I like how that looks, but you can always, I kind of don't, so then that's okay. I can then undo that stitch, and I'm just going to go a little bit farther over and then go into those, go actually into right here. Watch me struggle. That's okay. So it depends on how tight your single crochets are. I sometimes will go back and like undo it a little bit after like looking at the row. So right now I'm doing decently. You can kind of see like they're not pulling too tight, but they're also not bunched together. You do want it to just be a nice smooth row. So it is a little bit of playing it by ear and kind of just, you know, knowing yourself and how tight you typically pull your stitches to see like what looks good and how many single crochets it's going to take to get down that strap. Okay, so I have now done a single crochet down the whole length. You can see the nice top right there. And you can kind of see on this side, it's a lot more clean than this side, and that's part of the reason why you do that single crochet all the way down. I've continued it down to the front of the bib, and now I'm at this joint where we're going to go from the front of the bib into the going around the side. I personally put one in that corner right here so that we can have a really nice stitch going into it. This is the tail string from where I attached the yarn to start the strap, and so I'm going to continue to carry that into here, and then we're back to having nice tops of double crochets to just go around in. So again, we're just going to do a single crochet all the way around and then back up to the other side of the bib. Okay, I have now, we have the original hole here, then I went down the side, up the back, up the other side, and now we're at the top of the first strap that you made. And so once you've done that last single stitch right here in the corner, you're going to chain 2. Don't pull too tightly. You just want to do like a normal, what you would have been doing anyways, 2 stitches. And then you're going to go to the very end, sorry, my finger's in the way, and go right into here, and you're going to do a little slip stitch. So yarn over and pull through like that. Then you now have the second little hole right here for your button, and then you're just going to go ahead and continue down the side doing single crochet stitches like you did before, and you're going to keep going until you get back to the top of this other strap. Okay, so now we're back up to our first strap where we already have the loop created. I have done the last single crochet I'm going to do here, and now I'm going to go in right here into that first little stitch area where you did your, sorry, my finger, where you did the first little chain, and I'm going to do a slip stitch there instead of a single crochet, and then I'm going to cut and tie off this section. This is what, and I'm gonna cut this off a little bit later, but this is what the front will look like now. So this is the romper. So far we're doing really great with that. Now we're going to go back down here because we need to add a front flap for the diaper. Okay, so what I just did off camera was I counted mine and I put stitch markers. So what you're going to do is you're going to take, originally we were working upwards this way, so you are actually working on the opposite end of what you normally do, but there still is, let me get closer, you can still see like there's places right here where you'll be going in to do your stitches. So you're going to go to the end of the bib here, and that coordinates with that first stitch. This one coordinates with like this stitch right here. Right, you can kind of see it go straight down. So then starting here, I counted 12 over, and I put where that 13th stitch would be because that's where you're going to start. I then counted, you're going to have 16 stitches in this first row. So then I counted 16 over, made sure I was still okay, and this is the 16th stitch. And then I counted again over here and I saw that I still had 12. So that made sure that between these two are going to be the middle of this. So I just prefer to triple count all of my numbers. You don't have to if you trust your counting. You can just count 12 over and go from there. Or you can count 12 from both sides, go there, and then count 16 in the middle. However you feel most comfortable, do it. I just like to make sure that this is truly the middle so that everything will align perfectly in the end.